considering today's topic, I should probably, well, I don't have to, but I'm gonna show you what I'm eating today. This is kangaroo mince. Yes, we eat kangaroo in Australia. It's just lean mince, like low fat mince, high protein. I got a damper roll because more Australian. Big old chunk of cheese and some potatoes. These are like charisma potatoes. So they're like lower carb or something, but I haven't eaten all day, so I'm having like a fairly big-ish meal right now because I haven't had any breakfast. So yeah, eating some lunch. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm here to talk to you about my eating disorder that I've had, well, I developed years ago and I've sort of had for like 6-7+ years now. And I say had because, as I will mention later in the video, it's not gone. And I think that's something that I don't think a lot of people understand with eating disorders. So I'm gonna eat this and I'm gonna get into it. Anyway, that got destroyed in like a minute. And I should probably get onto the topic of today. Yeah, so I don't want to ramble too much. I kind of want to make this video fairly quick and a little bit light. I don't want it to be like all super depressing. So the TLDR of today is, yeah, I developed an eating disorder, and a couple of years ago I started going to counselling and a psychiatrist and a dietitian. I sort of got a bit of help there, and that helped. But I think it's sort of more, the reason I wanted to make this topic is because obviously people probably know, if you follow me on Instagram or if you know me personally, you know I had one. But it's also kind of, I wanted to point out the patterns that exist and the trajectory that happened to where I am today compared to where I was when I was much younger. And I think it all started when I was a lot younger, and I didn't realize it yet because I wasn't really old enough to understand it. But obviously being like a 12, 13, 14-year-old kid, you're surrounded by this idea of what guys are supposed to look like. So there's always magazines and TV, and you're going to school and you're starting to get interested in girls or guys, and you're pummeled with this idea that like, oh, girls like the hunky, hot-bodied, you know, pretty boys. Like that's what they want. They want rippling abs and stuff. And you're like, oh, well, I'll go and get fit. So when I was like 12 to 14, I was quite fat. Like I was a chunky boy. And I wasn't ever really concerned about it. Like I knew I got bullied for it, but I never really sort of related that back. I didn't put a negativity on it against me. I was always just like, these kids are cunts. Why are they so mean to me just because I'm fat? But the problem was like I built this idea that, well, maybe I'm the problem. When I got to being like 14, I moved cities to where I am now. And I started going, I should probably play some sport. I should probably be active. So I started playing sport, and strangely enough, I started to lose quite a lot of weight. Girls started to get quite a lot more interested in me. And I had like a really great high school period up until about year 11, where I stopped playing sport and gained all the weight back. But luckily enough, kept the girls. Fun fact for you, be funny. So yeah, like my teen years, it's interesting to look at it in contrast to what you probably hear more about eating disorders and about young kids. Is like we obviously hyper focus on girls' experience during that time, but it's always interesting when I have conversations and I point out how exactly identical young boys have that pressure, but we don't really approach it the same way. Like I'm sure there are people around there going like, oh, you don't need to worry about it. You know, there's obviously nice people going, you don't need to look a certain way to be worth something. But I think the difference is that we tell that to girls, and then it's this constant sort of support. It's like, yeah, you don't need to look that way. It's patriarchy. It's, you know, societal pressure. But when you turn around and go to boys and go, oh, you don't need to look that way, that's kind of it. It's just sort of like, whatever. I mean, but you can deal with it though. Like you can deal with bullying. It's not the same. Like it's this weird idea that's like, yeah, bullies are dicks. Suck it up. And it's really odd. And I'm not talking about like my parents or even my friends. They all really understood it. It's really more just about the general idea around it, because we're constantly shown this idea. It's like, no, but you're actually not worth shit. Like girls aren't going to like you. They always portray the fat chubby kid as the one that girls don't care about, or the one that gets friend zoned. They want the rippling abs boy, the Adonis that doesn't exist. And yet in the same time in the media, it was sort of like, you can be overweight and it's okay, girls, it's fine. And then it was like, no, you can't, man. No, you can't. You're not allowed to. You have to be strong and supportive and look after your family and be able to defend your girlfriend and all of this sort of like really stupid masculine shit. And so that's really, I think, when it started for me. It was when I was a teenager, but it didn't embody itself until I was in like my first serious relationship. And to this day, I don't really think I can pinpoint the moment that I sort of started to slip. But I can tell you a few instances over the years where I think it just kept adding on the layers before it all tumbled away. And so, like, for example, once when I was about 21, I was dating this girl. We were watching TV, we were watching Supernatural, and Jensen Ackles like lifts his shirt up and he's ripped. And I said, just out of jest to this girl I was dating at the time, I was like, I could look like that if I wanted to. And she just laughed at me and said, no, you couldn't. And I think that was like the moment that I started to go, well, fuck you. I'm gonna go lift some weights and I'm gonna look like Jensen Ackles. And after a while, I kind of got interested in it. I was like, oh, I'm actually kind of getting healthier. I feel better, I can run longer. This is pretty good. I started going to the gym more frequently. But the eating disorder started way later. Because I was just eating whatever. I was still going out on the weekends with my friends and like doing whatever. And what had happened is, when I was younger, when I was single, I had lost a ton of weight. So I'd started at 140 kilos. So I was 300 pounds and I was really overweight. I was living at home with mum. And I sort of was like, I'm gonna lose a ton of weight. And I got down to like 80 kilos over the course of about 4 years. And during that time, I'd started dating my now ex, and the weight had started to creep back up. And so it was this sort of constant yo-yo of being like, I'm really obese, or now I've lost a ton of weight, no, I'm back up again. So I'd gone from like 140, 300 pounds, sweating in public, down to like 80 and being like, hey, I'm actually friggin' lean, this is awesome. And then getting into a relationship and spiking it back up. But what had happened during that period is like that self-hatred had started. It sort of just came out of nowhere. It was like, oh, I let myself get fat, I'm a waste of space. I'm gonna go back to the gym, I'm gonna get my diet in control. I spoke to my sister who put me on Weight Watchers, and that was how that started. I started counting points and I was losing tons of weight and it was addictive. After about 3 to 4 months, I'd gone from 115 down to like 95. It was huge. I'd lost tons of weight. I was starting to feel much more confident in myself and it was great. But what had happened is the Weight Watchers had ended, and this desire to constantly lose weight, because I still wasn't where I wanted to be. I wasn't lean enough, I wasn't rippling, like my abs weren't like shredded. So the Weight Watchers had stopped, so I had to kind of figure out what I needed to do now. And that's when I sort of realized, oh, well, I'll just do calorie counting. And so I'm going online like, oh, I'm gonna search this up and oh, this is good for me, this is bad for me. And that's where the problems really lie in eating disorders, is like that self-education, and you're online and you're on Instagram and people are saying, don't eat this, don't eat that. If you want this for abs, you know, do this kind of exercise. And you're just pummeled with this really terrible misinformation. But you're like, yeah, no, this is right, because they're shredded, they must know it. They're 100% right, that's how it works. And I was losing weight again, it was great. Until I had moments, and I don't think at the time I realized if it was a problem. Like I would go to the gym and I would come home and it would be like a Friday night and my girlfriend would be like, let's go out. And I would just be like, no, I can't drink alcohol. It's gonna make me gain weight. I don't wanna drink alcohol. I stopped drinking all alcohol from then until I would say 2017. Like I didn't touch it. Because I was like, no, alcohol's useless. It doesn't do anything good for you. It's gonna inevitably kill me. All of this sort of really toxic thought process on alcohol. And I would like look into other things that I can't eat. You know, why aren't I losing this last little bit? Because obviously like weight loss occurs, you have plateaus and you would hit like this baseline, you wouldn't lose weight. It's like, okay, well it's clearly I'm not eating what you're telling me not to eat. Maybe I should just not eat more. But from like 2014 to, I wanna say like 15, like that year was the most turbulent, because I went from being like 85 kilos, really happy, I was a size 32 in pants, down to 63 kilos in like the space of a year. Because what had happened is I was just like, I'm still not shredded. I need to be leaner. I need to look better. I'm still not where I want to be. So how do I do this? And I was like, it's got to be this. And where I started to eat absolutely no carbohydrates, almost no fats, almost all protein, combined with the anxiety around exercise. So if I took a day off, it was the end of the world. So I was training all day, every day. At its peak, by the end of 2015, I was training from 4 a.m. until 4 p.m. every day, I was exercising in some form. And I would beat myself up if I didn't. So I woke up and I would lift weights for an hour with no rest periods. It was like I set a timer for an hour and I didn't stop doing some kind of exercise for a whole hour. And then I would literally knock out 10,000 steps by 10 a.m. I would just walk or go into shopping or something, buy groceries, come home, exercise for another hour before I would let myself eat. Like I hadn't earned it at that point. And then so lunch rolls around and my lunch would be like 200 grams of some kind of protein and just a plate of vegetables. Absolutely no carbs, I guess you could say, but like the vegetables were carbs. And so the logic in my head was like, that's tons of carbs. It's like 60 grams of carbs on the plate, it's tons. Even though most of them were fibrous and I wasn't absorbing quite a lot of them, I was getting a very small percentage out, so it wasn't actually helping me replenish the glycogen as it should have. But I had told myself that's fine because everything else is bad. White bread's bad, rice is bad, it's all simple carbs, it's gonna make me gain fat. I don't want that. I'm gonna eat all protein, almost no fats, because fat makes you gain fat too apparently, and then all like vegetable carbs. And so it would like hit lunchtime and I'd eat that one meal. And then I would run. I would go for like a 10K hike and it would take me an hour and a half. And so by the time I got back, I would then exercise for another, like I would lift weights for another hour. So I was lifting weights for 3 hours a day, plus doing like this huge hike for about 2 hours. So it was about 5 to 6 hours of just straight exercise. And then on top of that, walking in between every meal, like constantly walking around the block, downtown, whatever. I was usually averaging like 25 to 30,000 steps every single day. And this was the process. It was like I didn't let myself stop until I'd done all of that. And it built this constant, really negative habit because it was every day. Like days off didn't exist for almost a whole year, nothing. It was that process. I had injured myself so badly that I could barely move my arm and I would still do it because I couldn't tolerate the idea of getting fat. Because if I thought I took even a day off and ate the same meals, the calories would just be stored and I'd get fat. Like that's the process that had happened. And it happened so quickly between like, I don't like how I look, I want to lose a bit of fat, cool, to that was like a 12-month period. And then it was like a process of a whole year of that before it got to the point where my mum was like screaming at me in tears because of how upset she was because she thought I wasn't eating at all. And me being like, yes I am, fuck you, I know what I'm doing. To pretty much being forced to go to Headspace and talk to a dietitian, talk to a doctor, and they were like, yeah, this is bad. I had been eating so many vegetables that I had gotten bronzed skin from it. They thought I had jaundice because my skin was so basically yellow and bronzed. Turns out I was just overloaded with vitamin A and I was just like, and I had no body fat. Like at this point I was 63 kilos at 6'4". Like I was nothing but just the bare minimum amount of muscle tissue that my body could hold and skin. Like that was it. There was nothing. It was like 1% body fat or something ridiculous. Like I was basically dying. It was so bad that I would sit in like 40-degree heat with a hoodie on and shiver because there was no fat content to do anything. So I was still cold. Like the slightest breeze was chilling me. It wasn't like, oh, suddenly I'm cured. It wasn't just like a couple of meetings with a stranger and I was cured. The addiction to exercise maintained for quite a while. So even though I started to eat more and like let myself eat these foods, I was still like punishing myself mentally for it. And so I would exercise just as much. I was like, no, it's fine. But it was this really slow gradual from like 2016 to 2017 was this slow gradual focus on exercise to be as strong as possible and food to fuel that exercise. And there were plenty of times where I would like break down crying and people would invite me out and I still wouldn't go out, and I'd have days where I just wouldn't eat at all. And so it wasn't just like this immediate like, oh great, yeah, over the 12 months I was fine. It wasn't even until probably 2 years later, like after I'd met Beth, I was still pretty deep in it. I was actually heavier than I am now, but I was still constantly sort of consumed by it. I was eating these same like 3 meals every day, and they were really, really hyper focused on as low carb as possible. And the difference was that I was allowing myself to have these little sort of like cheat meals and stuff. And so I kind of I knew what I needed to do, and I had the mindset figured out. It was like, I just need to get as strong as possible. I just need to eat for that. If I can eat enough and lift more weight every couple of weeks, like I'm doing good, that means I'm on the right track. But like the itch, the constant sort of looking at yourself in the mirror and hating what you saw was always there, and that'll never leave. And I remember on one of my last sessions when I was a lot healthier, I was about 10 kilos healthier at this point, the psychologist said to me, she said, it's never going to go away. You've trained your brain, kind of like how you ride a bike. Like you could leave the bike for 10 years and come back, you still know how to ride one, right? And that's the exact same process that had happened with this, and it happens in most people with eating disorders apparently, is because you've created this pathway in your brain, this synapse, your brain will always have that connection, so it's always going to have this sort of learned process, but it's always going to be like this little itch at the back of your head that goes like, you're a bit fat, you stop eating that. And it's a daily thing. Even now, we will occasionally go out for dinner sometimes, and that itch comes out really hard for me, and I just can't pick, I don't want to eat this food because it's really calorie dense, or it's like, it's hard, and it's sort of hard to explain that to people when they see me now and they have absolutely no idea of what the history is behind it. And they think I'm just like your average dude, because for the most part, like I go out and I drink and I party, and I don't really focus too much. Like I don't weigh my food or any of that. I don't weigh in, I don't weigh my food, nothing. So people see that and they haven't seen the last almost decade of everything that happened before it. And so when it's sort of hard to explain to people, like, no, I still struggle on a day to day. And so that's why I get so personally involved when I see people expressing these sort of opinions or these sort of traits. Like I can pick them now. I can see them in people going, that's a disordered approach, and I'm worried about that person. And I get very, very like amped up because I'm an aggressive, passionate person, I guess. So I get very amped up about it. I get very angry when I see it, because it's so odd to see it from the outside and being able to go, you're really on a bad track and I want to help, but you're not listening to me. And I'm like going, why aren't you listening? And going, dude, that was you like 5 years ago. And I'm very proud to say that I'm much happier now. But the downside, quite clearly if you've watched any of my videos, is that I recently, only in the last like 6-7 months actually probably about a year now, have been going to the doctors because I've been suffering from some pretty bad like issues. I have really, really poor strength. Like I was getting stronger for a while, and then I just can't seem to get any stronger. I find it's very difficult for me to add muscle tissue. It's very difficult for me to get any stronger in my lifts. Like I haven't made considerable progress in my strength training for 2 years now, and I was not getting any erections. It was almost impossible for me to maintain one, to have one, to climax, any of that. And my hair started thinning really recently and stuff like this, and I realized, okay, this looks like it could be a hormone problem. And I went to see the doctor, and they were like, yeah, your testosterone's like really low. I had the testosterone of an 80-year-old man, effectively. It was like 370 out of a possible 600 to 1,000 normal range. And so they were like, okay, we need to send you to an endocrinologist. Went to her, I got put on some therapy. It wasn't testosterone, it was HCG, which is designed to raise my follicle stimulating hormone to help like my natural production. That didn't work. And as of today, I still haven't been on testosterone of any kind, either legal or illegal. I haven't done any kind of hormone therapy, and I'm still suffering the same problems. And so I am still currently, damn near 10 years later, suffering from this fucking eating disorder. And it's going to be a long road out of this. Like I could very well not actually be fertile. It could very well be that I've tanked my hormones that badly that they're just never going to come back, and my sperm count's too low. All of this sort of shit that is constantly on my head, I don't really give a shit, to be honest, about the strength. I wouldn't be taking testosterone to be like big and buff. It would just to feel okay. Like to not be constantly depressed and wake up in constant pain. Like my existence is a constant soreness. I can barely go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week now without being days in between, just so I can recover. And I'm 29. So yeah, it's not gone. The eating disorder doesn't just sort of like, oh cool, she's eating normally again, he's eating normally again, it's fine, they're back to normal. Not how it works. And I've got a long road ahead of me. And it was one of the reasons why I had to stop the powerlifting videos specifically. I stopped doing lifting in a lot of my videos. And from here on out, I won't be doing a lot of lifting in my videos because I started the channel to be like a powerlifting programming channel and be like, oh yeah, watch me, I'm gonna get ready to compete. And getting to the point where I'm like, I'm never gonna be a competitive powerlifter, like even close. Like my numbers are nothing worth even bragging about, like I could barely bench 100 kilos. And so I was like, yeah, but I'm putting this pressure on, like I should be better. I put in all of this effort, why aren't I getting stronger even slightly? And I had to stop and be like, no, that's not gonna help. You're just creating another like hatred for yourself in another form. So I had to stop programming. I had to stop making powerlifting centric videos and information. I had to completely flip my lifestyle around. Anyway, end of the video. It's long. I'm gonna take forever to edit this, but yeah. I don't really care about powerlifting anymore. You probably won't see a lot more of it on this channel. I'll be lifting, and if you follow me on Instagram, which I hope you do, I'll still be posting my lifts and stuff there because it is something I love and I'm interested in, and I'm just glad that I finally have that joy back in it. If you would like to buy some products, we have these hats available now, and we have the Pay Me tees, which I'm currently not wearing, and some other stuff, and I'm just constantly making designs, so please give us a follow. If you like something, please buy it. If you want to see more of something, or if you like to just chuck us ideas, we're always thinking of stuff, so yeah. And if anyone's watching this who's like having some trouble, it's gonna be cool. You will figure it out. Eat some bread. Bread's really good. Subscribe, or I don't know, but subscribe or Berkeley will sit on your face at night and you'll die.